You know, it's when a crisis hits that our true colors really show. There's this ancient story from the text of two kings that just throws this into sharp relief, pitting two completely different worldviews against each other in a life or death situation. It's a story about a military disaster, a desperate search for water, and what we all do when we finally hit rock bottom. Okay, let's dive into this.
Now, what you're looking at here, this isn't some kind of typo. This exact sentence actually pops up twice in the text, kicking off two totally different chapters. And that's completely intentional on the author's part. It's this powerful literary signal, really hammering home the point that King Ahab's dynasty is just stuck in this state of perpetual crisis and spiritual failure. The rebellion that started way back in chapter 1, it's still festering, still unresolved by the time we get to chapter 3. So this ongoing rebellion by the kingdom of Moab finally pushes Ahab's son, King Jehoram of Israel, to do something. He decides, okay, it's time to assemble an army and put an end to this insurrection once and for all. To crush the rebellion, Jehoram builds a coalition. He calls on King Jehoshaphat from the southern kingdom of Judah, who he's got a political alliance with, and he also ropes in the smaller kingdom of Edom. So you've got three kings, one mission: march on Moab and reestablish control.
On paper, their strategy seems brilliant. Instead of a direct head-on assault, they decide to take this long, roundabout route through the desolate wilderness of Edom. The whole goal is to catch the Moabites completely by surprise from their undefended southern border, a sneak attack. So for 7 days, they march, and the plan is working. Until, well, it isn't. Deep in this barren desert, their clever military maneuver just grinds to a sudden, absolutely terrifying halt. The surprise attack has just turned into a self-inflicted trap.
And the problem is brutally simple. There is no water. And we're talking about thousands of soldiers and all the animals they depend on. This is a death sentence. They're stranded, facing dehydration and defeat before a single battle has even been fought. This moment of extreme crisis becomes a test. It just strips away all the titles and the crowns and reveals the core beliefs of the two main kings, Jehoram of Israel and Jehoshaphat of Judah. And man, their reactions could not be more different. So King Jehoram, the architect of this whole failed plan, immediately gives in to despair. And just notice who he blames. Not his poor planning, not his bad intel, but God. He frames their whole predicament as some kind of divine trap, which is a classic response from someone whose faith is, let's say, superficial at best.
And this contrast just reveals everything. While Jehoram is pointing fingers and wallowing in doom, Jehoshaphat's instinct is completely different. He doesn't look for someone to blame, he looks for a solution from a higher source. His first question is basically, hey, is there not a prophet of the Lord here that we may inquire of the Lord by him?
And Jehoshaphat's question, it completely changes the direction of the entire story. The search for a solution shifts away from military strategy and turns toward a spiritual answer. And it turns out the answer is way closer than any of them think.
One of the servants says, yeah, the prophet Elisha is here. But what's so telling is how he's introduced. Not as some great miracle worker, but with this humble description of a servant who did menial tasks for his master, the prophet Elijah. In a camp that's full of kings and generals, he is, by any worldly standard, a nobody.
But Jehoshaphat sees what others don't. He hears this humble description and has this moment of profound clarity. He declares the word of the Lord is with him. And that's the crucial point, right? Jehoshaphat understands that the power to save them doesn't lie in rank or reputation. It lies with the person who carries a true word from God.
And this is really the central insight of the whole narrative. God hadn't abandoned them in the desert. Think about this. He had already placed the solution, the prophet Elijah, right there in the middle of their hopeless situation before they even knew they needed him.
So this whole crisis, it's all building to a much larger idea. The story uses it to contrast two fundamentally opposed worldviews: the way of the world, which is represented by Moab and its gods, and the way of God, revealed through the prophet Elisha.
See, the Moabites worshipped a god named Molech, and the logic of this worship is pretty transactional. It's all driven by human desire. If you want something, you have to pay for it with a sacrifice. And if you want something really, really big, like victory in war to save your own life, well, you have to offer the most valuable thing you possibly have. For them, this ultimately meant sacrificing their own children.
The contrast just could not be more stark. Later in the story, the king of Moab, when he's facing defeat, actually sacrifices his eldest son on the city wall. And this is the world's logic. To save yourself, you have to give up what is most precious to you. But the God of Elisha operates on a radically different logic. He doesn't demand a horrifying sacrifice from you. He offers a free, life-saving word of deliverance. The ultimate expression of this, of course, is that to save all of us, God doesn't ask for our children. He sacrifices his own.
And so this ancient story really leaves us with a very modern question. When we find ourselves in our own dry, desperate wildernesses, when our plans fail and we are completely out of options, what is our first response? Do we, like Jehoram, just despair and start casting blame? Or do we, like Jehoshaphat, believe that even in the middle of our crisis, a word of deliverance might already be waiting for us?